There are 4 basic types of nailers. The ones that we have in the shop are the brad nailer, the finish nailer, and I have a framing nailer at the shop. We don't have the 4th one, which is the pin nailer. The pin nailer is the smallest. The brad nailer, this one, is the 2nd smallest. The finish nailer is the next size up, and the framing nailer is the largest size of nails. Pin nailers are used for really small, detailed work. They're usually used for finished carpentry projects, small woodworking projects, things that you want to have a very, very tiny fastener that you have to fill the least amount with your wood putty, so you make it as unnoticeable as possible. The pin nailer could be used in a prop shop for a lot of small prop work and assembly, and that might be a reason to get one in the future, but the reason I've kind of avoided getting a pin nailer is it's one more style of round that we have to keep track of, and we already have enough varieties between the narrow crown staples, the medium crown staples, the wide crown staples, the brad nails, the finish nails, and now the framing nails. It's a lot of different pneumatic fasteners to keep track of when you're first learning, and introducing one more variety, it's just going to make it more complicated. So it's a good reason to avoid for right now, but if we start doing more fine prop work in the future, we might probably actually get one. The brad nailer, that's also used for finished work, usually shooting through hardwood in a finished woodworking project. We use it for installing molding on sets, baseboard, cornice, that sort of thing, assembling those things where we want to have a fine, tiny head and not have to do a lot of filling and patching. So the brad nailer is very useful for that. Most finished carpenters will use the finish nailer for that purpose in your house, because instead of being 18 gauge nails, it's 16 gauge nails, and they're just a little bit stronger and will stand up long term to abuse that homeowners and children and pets and everything might have on that. The framing nailer is used for framing stud walls, which are usually made out of 2x4, and usually you use 3.5-inch rounds to go through the 2x4, and it makes for quick assembly of 2x4 structures. That's also used heavily in the construction industry, not so much in theater. We tend to avoid building in 2x4 and 2x6 and 2x12 because it's very heavy, and it makes your platforms very heavy, and it makes everything twice as heavy as it needs to be. We want theater to be light and easy to manage, and we want to be able to screw through it, and you can't screw through a 2x4 unless you get some 3-inch drywall screws, and you either have a lot of muscles to push through it, or you do a lot of pre-drilling, which doubles up your amount of work. Building sets out of 1x wherever possible is going to be your preferred choice, unless you need the additional strength of the 2x4 or 2x12 or 2x6 structure. Brad nails are for the brad nailer. There are various sizes, and again, if you are brad nailing into 3/4 inch pine, you need to use the 1.5-inch length brad nail. Above that, in a different color bin, are the finish nails. They're straight finish nails. They are very similar to the brad nails, except these are 16 gauge wire, and the brad nails are 18 gauge wire. So the wires are a little bit bigger. These will not fit in a brad nailer and will not work in a brad nailer. You need to not get these two mixed up. We do need to visually be able to identify the difference between the finish nails and the brad nails. The one in my left hand are the brad nails. The one in my right hand on the bottom are the finish nails. And the difference is not in the length, but it's in the size of the wire used. The brad nails are made out of 18 gauge wire. The finish nails are made out of 16 gauge wire. 16 gauge wire is bigger than 18 gauge wire. 16 gauge wire is going to be a little bit stronger. It's not going to deviate. It's not going to be conforming to imperfections in the wood as much. The 18 gauge wire is going to be affected by grain of the material and will cause some challenges sometimes. We do use the 18 gauge brad nails for attaching pine. Again, this is 1¼ inch brad nail. It's a little bit short for going through 3/4 inch pine. I should be using 1½, but my brad nailer at home only takes up to 1 3/8. It won't fit the 1½ inch brad nails, so I can't really use it for this project. If I'm going to be going through this, I will use my finish nailer, because that is the right size to go through the 3/4 inch pine. You will find in practice that as you're going through pine with your brad nails and with your narrow crown staples, it does occasionally just randomly shoot out the side. And that is partly because the brad nails are 18 gauge and they are smaller than the 16 gauge finish nails or the 16 gauge medium crown staples. But it's also a factor of the pine. And you can see the pine grain here. And because the pine grain is variable, depending on how the wood was cut, depending on how you rip it, if we rip this piece here, my nails are probably going to go through pretty much how I want them. But if I am shooting a nail through here, and let's say this is my piece of 1x3, the 18 gauge wire may be deviated by that grain, especially the 1½ inch, and may shoot out the side because of that grain. So it's just one of those things you have to be conscious of with your wood, with your pine, and with your narrow crown staples and your brad nails. They do tend to do that, and then you have to either pull the brad nails out, refire them, or grind them off, or do some sort of adjustment. And if it's a product that you're trying to make look nice, it may ruin your project just with one little, accidental grain thing. And this is what an angled load looks like for the framing nailer. This is the 3½ inch nail. They do make several varieties. The one the most useful for us is the 3½ inch for nailing into 2x4. These loads are not interchangeable between every nailer and every brand. So this is a 21-degree load angle, and it only works in tools that have that 21-degree load. If you get a different tool that has a steeper load, you're going to need to get a different style and make and manufacture of the framing loads. This is the brad nailer. A couple of the brad nailers look a little differently, but they all function the same. They have all the same features as the pneumatic staplers, and they all work pretty much the same way. This one opens up, the brad nails come out. And it's real important here that with the brad nailer, when you put the brads in, you need to put this is the pointed end that's going to shoot through the wood, and this is the head, and that's the part that's going to be actuated. You need to put them in with the point part all the way at the bottom, like that. Each of these various grooves are for tracking the various different heights of available nail sizes. I don't have a shorter one, but if this is a finished nail. If I was doing a shorter one, it would go in like that, and it would fit on the bottom. You don't want to put the shorter ones in like that. It will not work properly. So make sure that they fit in all the way in the bottom of that slot and slide all the way forward. The Porter cables do have the depth control dial. This one does not have an adjustment between bump or contact, and it does have the trigger lock, which helps you when you're carrying it not to accidentally fire it. And it does have the quick release. The Porter cable, the newer ones don't have any adjustment here. They shoot the air out the back. This is my personal brad nailer at home. It only shoots up to 1 3/8 inch brad nails. The ones that we have in the shop all shoot up to 1½ inch or 2 inch brad nails. We want to use the 1½ inch brad nails. for most of the work we do. This is our finish nailer, and the finish nailer looks a lot like the medium crown stapler, and the loads look a lot like the brad nails, and it's easy to be confused. This comes back here and locks into place. This button releases it and it goes forward. Nails load like that. And then I'm controlling it, I'm holding this and I'm pushing that in, and that goes forward. And more nails have been loaded. Depth control right here. Quick release. Now some of these older tools and some of the other varieties have a tool like this. If you happen to be on the side, if you happen to be going into the side and you accidentally push on this, you could accidentally release your... So some of the ones that have the side activating mechanism, if you are flush with the floor or up against a wall, you could accidentally trigger that. This Porter cable has the air exhaust on the top. You can direct it away from yourself. There is no adjustment between full sequential actuation, which is the single firing method, or contact or bump firing. There are two kinds of finish nailers. There are straight finish nailers and there are angled finish nailers. We only have the straight finish nailers. Again, if we were to introduce an angled finish nailer, it'd be one more round and one more style of fastener to keep track of, and one more style of fastener to confuse everybody when they're first learning. If you're going shopping for finish nails, make sure you get the straight ones, because the angle ones won't work in our finish nailers. The brad nailer, I've loaded this with brad nails instead of staples. Now it contains brad nails, so we're going to do brad nailing with it. This is the tool that does both. Brad nails are basically if you need something to be less noticeable and you want to have your nails and fasteners not be as noticeable. You want them to be a little more invisible. The brad nail is nearly the most smallest, the tiniest fastener you can have. There's one fastener smaller called a pin nailer, and we don't have any pin nailers here. They're more for a fine finished work type of carpentry. So I'm just going to shoot through this. I'm using 1.5 inch because I'm going through the 3/4 inch pine. Just like that. I think it's still shooting staples. Might still be shooting staples. There might be a few staples loaded in. Or it might just be that's the way the device works. That kind of defeats the purpose of it. If the hole is as big as the staple hole, it kind of defeats the purpose of the brad nail with that tool. Because the holes here are exactly the same size as a staple would be. And if you want your wood to have a tiny little hole of the brad nail head, you really don't want that big of a dent in your wood. Fascinating. I guess that would mean I don't approve of that tool for brad nails. This is what the brad nail hole should look like, not like these big old staple holes. I've got 2 brad nailers. If you were building your birdhouse, you would probably want to assemble it with your brad nailer to have the smallest nail hole. This is our finish nailer. It's got the slightly bigger head. Instead of having 18 gauge brads, it has 16 gauge nails. They are the same length. They just are thinner diameter head and shank, and they will not work interchangeably. Slightly bigger heads. That one needs to be hammered down in. I can't show you the framing nailer because I just bought this tool over the summer, and I don't have the nails for it. I didn't buy any nails, I just bought the framing nailer. We occasionally use this. The framing nailer is for nailing 2x4 to 2x4 with 3.5 inch nails. But when I get some, we'll add it to the video. I do have the palm nailer. This will be used for driving common nails, such as this. I'm going to get one more piece of 2x4. The palm nailer can take one nail and it stops when it gets to the kind of fun, huh? It's kind of hard to get it to that last bit without messing up your wood, but you just need to hammer one in. You don't want to use a hammer. You could get the palm nailer. Ooh. The recommendation is for all manufacturers is to put 3 drops of pneumatic tool oil into the air inlet at the start of every 8-hour day. You take this and you put in 1, 2, 3 drops of oil.